Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everybody here for another great Agile expertise evening, and really excited as we've got another great speaker coming up this evening for everybody. So firstly, want to say, as ever, thank you to Agile Expertise for sponsoring and hosting this evening's meetup. And it is fantastic to have some really great guests attending to come and see Alistair talk as well. So I want to obviously introduce Alistair. Alistair has become a great friend over the lockdown period. We've had a lot of meetings and discussions trying to build a community of like-minded Agilistas over the last few months. Alistair's got a great background in the sense that not only as a chartered accountant, he is also a qualified product owner, and therefore has the mindset in abundance when it comes to working with agile ways in organizations that he's been part of. And I'm not going to spoil much of the story and his background, and perhaps he could do just a couple of minutes about where he's been on his journey. But I'm really happy and really pleased to look forward to a talk, The Art of Leadership by Alistair. So Alistair, you feel free to share your screen, and we'll make a start.
Thank you. Let me just get that all done first, and then we know where we are, and then we can go from there. Let me click on that button. Hopefully that will take us there. So hopefully what you can see is just the presentation and not my notes. Is that correct?
We're all good. We're good.
Yeah, perfecto. So thank you so much, Giles. Thank you for hosting, and thank you for inviting me. I am truly excited and also truly humbled. So certainly, as Giles said, we've made a great group of friends since COVID. One of the good things, the nice things to come out of COVID, this community that we're building. And many of you are people that I listen to and learn from and look up to. I follow your posts. I watch some of your videos. I attend your talks. So I learn from you on these things so much. So it's really, truly quite humbling to have you all here listening to me and my musings. I'm keen to get through this presentation reasonably fast, because what I'm really interested in is the conversation that this will hopefully generate coming after the talk during the session, but also later on in terms of later on as we as we move on beyond this. So I'm really looking forward to that. And as ever, those of you who I haven't met yet, I'm really keen to connect with like-minded Agilistas. So hello, everybody. So you can see my screen, okay? Yes, Giles, is that right?
Yep, absolutely. All good to go.
Good, cool. Okay. So let's just dive in quickly. The crazy question is, we think of agile teams as being collaborating, cross-functional, self-organizing, and autonomous. So really, what therefore is the role of leadership? I have a strong belief that leadership, and I mean the right kind of leadership, is even more important when we are working with Agile, and even more important in the world today, which is so full of ambiguity, complexity, and so on. Now, for me, leadership is more of a role or a function, like sales, IT, finance, marketing, and whatever. It's got a specific part to play in the success of an organization. It's not about position. And when I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about some of the traditional things that people may be thinking about in terms of leadership, and hopefully we'll see that as we go through. For me, a leader helps navigate complexity and ambiguity, provides a clear vision, and is the person or the group of people who create the right environment for an organization to succeed. So what I want to do today is run through some of these items here. So obviously what you can see is that everything that I talk about is on a continuum. It's not sort of, right or wrong as far as I'm concerned. I think there is this continuum. In terms of the mindset, it's not fixed or agile. You can go beyond agile and get it wrong and move into chaos. The same with leadership styles and roles. You go too far the wrong way, I think, if you're not careful. I'm looking for that sweet spot there in the middle when we talk about all these things. And I think that when we do that, that's when we really have really interesting growth. Some of it can be exponential in some cases, but we're going to cover those topics very, very briefly, if that's okay with everybody. So very briefly then, we're talking about agile mindset. What do we mean by that? I think one of the easiest ways to talk about agile is what is agile not, or what is the opposite of agile? And in my head, the opposite of an agile mindset is a bureaucratic mindset or a fixed mindset. And as you can see here, many organizations have successfully, are successfully adopting and experimenting with the frameworks, the items along the y-axis there, along the left. And in doing so, many of the team members who are working in those teams are either through coaching or naturally moving across from extrinsic motivation, where I do as I'm told, to autonomy, mastery, and purpose, where they are truly excited and excitable about what they're doing and what they're delivering. And this idea that you had something to do with that piece of product that's come out the other end after a 2-week sprint or a 4-week sprint or whatever. And that's just really exciting. And we all know that obviously the benefits of the agile mindset, some of which I've listed there, come about when we move in that direction. But what I have found, and I'm sure you found the same, is that after a while of introducing agile, all the energy and the enthusiasm and excitement, at some point, and I don't know, it feels to me like it's around 8 or 9 months or so, things start to peter out, things start to fall off a bit. And that's just sort of a little bit sort of an inexperienced thing that I've had, and I've often sort of wondered why has the energy left the room, as it were? Why has Elvis left the building? And for me, what's happened is that it's because the entire organization isn't supporting those teams. If you have a really good agile leader in between the teams and the rest of the organization, the rest of the leadership, I think you can make it last a little bit longer. But inevitably, at some point, that person or those people are going to get tired of having to translate everything from agile to non-agile and so forth. And I think what we need to do then is to bring our leadership, and I think that for me, the move is from command and control across to this emotionally intelligent, enabling servant type of leader. If we just do the teams and the frameworks, we end up with really great agile projects being delivered. But eventually, if we want it to be enterprise agile, if we want the whole thing to happen, we need it to be that leadership. A little bit on how we ended up on the left-hand side of this quadrant, or the bottom left. Many of us have heard about Taylorism, and what happened when Frederick Taylor came up with this concept of scientific management in 1911. I mean, who doesn't want scientific management, right? I mean, it makes total sense that obviously you would jump on that in a heartbeat if you're a manager or a senior person. It just sounds the ideal thing to have. The challenge is that, as we all know, that was used specifically to try and drive a certain type of behavior pre-automation of the humans that were working on the factory floor. Now today, we don't hire people for their brains, for their brawn, we hire them for their brains. And it was a bit scary to me when I found out that it was as long ago as the 1950s that Douglas McGregor of MIT actually came up with theory X and theory Y, theory X being command and control and theory Y being what we're talking about. This idea that the leaders provide the vision and the right environment, and the organization works out on how to deliver against that vision, and so on. Now, today, I think we all play very, very great lip service to not being command and control. But I think now, the age of COVID and post-COVID, the age of agile, I think we need to mean it. We need to actually move across to the emotion intelligent enabling servant leadership, and recognize that position of leadership is no longer about being a position of privilege, but it's a position of responsibility. One final thought on this slide is people often talk about the silver bullet, and of course it's that thing that never happens. But honestly, in talking to many of you, as I have done over the last few months, and my own experiences over the last few years, having an agile mindset, I think, is the closest thing that we can get to a silver bullet in terms of driving our organizations. And it's important to realize that a really good agilista knows, and a really good leader knows actually when to still use waterfall and knows when to use command and control and has that in their toolkit, but they spend certainly 90+% of their time on the top right hand side of that quadrant. Okay. So that's just sort of my initial thoughts on that. How do we move to something new? How do we get there? You know, it can feel quite daunting to try and move, you know, both up the quadrant and along it at the same time. I sort of was thinking about this with some folks, and this is what sort of came to my mind. The first thing is that sometimes it's as simple as explaining something. A lot of us are already ready for a new way of doing things. We already instinctively feel that there should be a better way. We just don't have, maybe it hasn't been explained to us or we haven't seen it. And certainly that was my case in my experience with leadership, was that I felt that there must be a better way of doing it than my command and control way. And it wasn't until it was explained properly to me that I actually got it and thought, oh, well, maybe we could do that instead. So some people, explaining is enough. For some people, they may need some evidence, and it's fantastic if that evidence can be internal to the organization as well as external, where, and so often you will see this, is that somewhere in the organization, there will be already evidence before you even started, say, moving to Agile or moving to servant leadership. There'll be examples of that you can point to in your own organizations, and that's awesome if we can do that. The next thing, of course, is to model it. And for me, that's my favorite place, is you know, actually come into an organization and model it for them so that people can experience it, so they can experiment, but experience it. When you emotionally experience this form of leadership and this form of driving a business, then I think you know, it will stick. And then, of course, there's coaching as well, is the other part of that that we can do. So for me, moving is not, it's easy, but it's not obvious. It's simple, but it's also hard. If you'll allow me to contradict myself so massively on that. Why would we want to move? I suppose before we decide that we're going to move and we're going to go through the energy of making any changes at all, why do we want to do that? And I think that we all know that we simply do not have, well, there are two challenges. The first challenge is we simply never have enough time, money, or resources to achieve everything that we need to achieve in our daily tasks, let alone take on the new things that happen when there's a new project, a new plan, a new idea, a new leader comes in, and we have to, you know, and when nothing is ever taken away, it's just more is put on us. And that can become just completely exhausting. The next thing, of course, is that no plan survives contact with the enemy. And anything we do to try and prepare for things means that it just won't happen. Simply to handle this, we need to improve our productivity and we need to improve our ability to adapt. And to achieve this, we need all the brains in the organization to be working. And that's what I want to talk about around this for the next few minutes. So the good news is we are problem-solving machines. The human brain is quite simply nothing more than a problem-solving machine. And we can pretty much, well, we have solved pretty much every problem that has ever come about. And anything we haven't solved, we are in the process of solving. We also know through neuroscience and other things, we know exactly where insights come from. We know that around 60% of the ideas and the solutions come from the subconscious mind, and 40% from the conscious mind. And if we know what we're doing and we can create the right environment, we can almost have problem-solving innovation on demand. And I know that there are people on this call who have done, and I know Alkesh, for example, have done a lot of work around this and are able to talk for a while on that particular subject. The next question is, where are the ideas in the organization and where are the best ideas? We have to, I think, move away from the idea that as leaders, we are the master problem solvers. Actually, we're not. We need to ask for we need to set the agenda and set the vision. The master problem solvers, more often than not, are actually the people who are at the coalface, the people who are in the organization dealing with issues on a day in, day out basis. And if leaders provide the right environment and then create a golden thread between themselves and every person in the organization, then those ideas will flow and the innovation will flow, which will help drive the organization, help beat the competition, and so forth. Now, although we have this ability to problem solve and innovate, there is a catch, and that catch is known as the amygdala. Some of us know it as the lizard brain or the chimp brain. And basically what we have is we have a threat radar that has been built in. We've had this ever since whenever. And we need it to survive. And it gets triggered and at the slightest thing, as we'll see. And when it gets triggered, our brains quite simply shut down to put our bodies in the position where we can fight, flight, or freeze. And that's what that is, and it's built in. We can't get rid of it, so that's what it is. But what happens is we need. When this happens. What I mean by our brain shutting down is we have an inability to focus, remember, learn, or innovate. We simply cannot think. And we've all been in the situation where the boss calls you into the office. Alistair, could you step into my office, please? Now, I have never, ever been able to shake that shudder that goes down the back of my spine when I hear those words. And this is what we need to understand, is that we inadvertently cause people's amygdalas to be fired, to be triggered by some basic, just by working in the workplace. So we need to understand that. Worst case, we end up with a toxic scenario. That's the extreme end of the spectrum of what I'm talking about here. And luckily, today, most organizations are not purely toxic. There are still probably pockets or a few individuals here and there who cause things. But what I think we can do is we can actually dismantle this triangle from the bottom up. And what we can do is become if we don't have the leader that we need, we become the leader that we want to have. And then we protect the teams as best we can for as long as we can. And I know Alkesh, who's on this call, is going to be giving a talk on psychological safety in a few weeks, which I'm really looking forward to. And I think this is what it's all about. If we can get to this place. So what is our role as leaders? What should we be doing? For me, I think it's fairly simple. It's in those three sections there: a corporate vision with clarity and context. If we can convey that, then and the people know what we are expecting, we as leaders are expecting, then they can then implement those things. We need to be able to simplify things, make sure things are in the right place, and we need to be master impediment removers, I think, is one of our roles. And then the other things are psychological safety, promoting collaboration and innovation. And I think really that sort of summarizes what we should be doing as leaders, whether it's agile or anything else, to be honest. I think we should be doing that. So within all of this, of course, the question comes, what about governance? I've recorded a talk called The Art of Governance in the Age of Agile, which talks about that, how to handle risk and so forth. So I won't cover that here today. But what is interesting is we want to create leaders at all levels. Imagine an organization where everyone thought of themselves as the leader or as a leader and behaved accordingly. Then we could make decisions. And imagine if they could make decisions so that they could make their own decisions to get their work done. What we want to do is we want to push the decision making down to where the information is. So let the people who have the information make the decisions, not constantly try and drag the information up to the decision makers. And this is something that Dave Marquet in his book Turn the Ship Around talks about, which I think is really interesting. Ideas on that. But I think for me, the role is fairly simple, but we need to stay focused on that. As leaders, we also need to understand personalities, and it's interesting that there are personalities that are more suited to agile ways of working than not. And we need to, David Michel does a great talk on this. It's called How Evolutionary Psychology Validates the Agile Mindset. We recorded that in last year. And he talks about the fact that there are, we as personalities, some of us just jump on this and think it's amazing, and some of us really struggle. And if we're working properly in Agile, we are supporting everybody, and we are identifying the strengths of the people who struggle from a personality perspective with some of the Agile ways, and we support them. And I think that's really interesting. This particular piece of research that I'm showing you right now identifies that they've added a sixth big personality trait, which is the idea that the concept of handling ambiguity, which is, I think, is a great insight, because it's our ability to handle ambiguity really helps us to deal with Agile and work in the modern world. And I think this is where leadership is even more important, because we as leaders then can provide the assurance and the safety in the face of that ambiguity. Imagine if you're crossing the Atlantic on a sailboat. You know that you want to go from A to B, and there should be a straight line between that. But if you're on a sailboat, you're never going to be doing that in a straight line. In fact, you're almost always going to be off course. And that can really trouble people who don't understand what's happening. And that's where, again, leadership comes in to explain that it's part of the plan, what we're doing. We as leaders also need to understand the personalities so that we can support them and help them, with what they're struggling with. And as well as understanding their personality styles, we also need to understand our own leadership style. Now, there are many ways of cutting up the leadership continuum here. I chose this one because it's used by the British military. And I just think it's really, really interesting as we look at this. The British Army actually want their leaders to be on the transformational leadership side of this continuum. They're actually suggesting that the visionary affiliative coaching styles are the ones that they want to see in their leaders. And the other thing they talk about is that they expect their leaders to be able to move between these styles depending on what they're facing and who they're working with. And I think it's really interesting that that is the case. We have this perception that the army is all about command and control. And my nephew is currently going through SANTUS, going through the officer military training. We've had some fantastic conversations over lockdown about what it is. And he talks about this idea of mission command, this idea that the leaders provide simply the vision. And his role as a new officer will be to provide the vision and provide the safety. The environment for the soldiers, basically to work out how they're going to deliver that mission and to pursue it and to deliver that. And so again, decision making is pushed down to where the information is. And I think that's just really, really interesting. So a little bit more on this then. If we are going to push the idea, if we are going to put the decision making further down the organization, a couple of things need to be in place. And one of them is clarity, and the other one is competence. And this comes from, again, David Marquet turned the ship around. He talks about the fact that we need, if decision making is going to be allowed, people need to have clarity as to what it is that is expected of them, and they need to have the competence. What happens is that if there is a lot of clarity but no competence, everyone is enthusiastic out of their tiny minds but unable to do anything. Conversely, if you have high competence but no clarity and no real leadership, therefore you've got very highly skilled, very expensive professionals who are totally bored on your payroll. And Dave Marquet talks about finding that sweet spot, which sits in the middle. He goes a step further and he talks about this idea that he puts competence and clarity on the bottom and puts control along the left. And when he does that, he says, look what happens. If you have got high competency and clarity, you've managed that, but you then don't give control, you just end up with frustrated people who, very soon start, wanting to do something else. Conversely, if you release control too early, before you've make sure the clarity and competence is in place, if you release that too early, you have chaos. And so we need to, again, find that middle ground and make sure that we have those things in place. So, which I think is also, and he talks about the leader model. When we do this, something very interesting is going to happen, and that is that mistakes are going to happen. And how are we as leaders going to handle those mistakes? So my wife and I had the absolute privilege of attending a debrief by 4 former Red Arrows pilots. They were working in an acrobatics team, and they were doing a debrief, and we had the opportunity to attend that. And what was fascinating was they sat down, and the first thing that happened was, as they went around the table, was each one of them basically admitted what they had done wrong during that, what we thought was a completely perfect show. They talked about everything that had gone wrong. And it was just amazing to watch that. And it took our breath away. And in the car on the way home, we just said, wouldn't it be extraordinary if in every boardroom around the world, and if in every team meeting around the world, people had the courage just to say, look, I got that wrong. Maybe I need some help fixing it. Maybe I know what I've got and I can do it. It just really struck us how amazing that was. I think probably a few weeks later, I met an airline pilot, and I was talking about this because I was, the connection was that they were, winged vehicles, and I talked about what we had discovered, and this lady pilot, she said, "Oh yes, well we do that too." And she talked to me about a book called The Naked Pilot that completely transformed what happens in the cockpit. It used to be that the pilot, the main pilot, was basically God, and everything they said was how it would happen. And most of the accidents that were happening were people failures, not technical failures. And this book and a lot of research that went into it went to change the habits so that now the cockpit work as a team, and our airlines are so much safer. And so the question is, when there are mistakes, do we punish them or do we swarm them and try and solve them? And what they do with the airlines is they, as soon as they land and they talk about mistakes that they made or almost made, they share that with the organization so that the whole organization can work out, could there be a solution somewhere else that we could use to make sure that no one else ever hits something like that. And I just think that's just a great way to work. So that's just a really interesting aspect and something that we can help as leaders. So I've run through a lot of stuff here. These are kind of the things that I've touched on. And the question is, well, with all of that, Alistair, that you've given me, where do I start? Do you know what? Start wherever you like, because as soon as you start on any of these subjects, the other ones will start to flow. The other ones will start to follow. All I would say is start small, experiment and iterate. But you knew I was going to say that. This is, of course, I'm a talk to an agile group. So I was definitely going to say that. But I would say just start anywhere, but get started and to go on that journey, which is great. Again, just a quick reminder of how you do that journey. Sometimes you just need things explained. Sometimes you need evidence. Sometimes they need to be modeled. Sometimes coach, some of a mixture of all three, but of all four. But again, just start small, iterate, make sure you're realizing that value early, and so forth, as a way to get to where we want to get to. I hope that's been of interest. Of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg, just a bunch of stuff underneath each of those slides that I would love to talk to and share and learn more about, and as I'm always learning. So I just really interesting stuff. It's great to be working with people who have the same mindset. And I want to say thank you again for having me, and thank you for listening. My final thought is a quote that my dad taught me a long time ago. North American Indians, their definition of a leader. A leader is one through whom great blessings flow. And I think that really is a beautiful summary. So with that, let's continue this conversation.
Alistair, thank you very much indeed. Brilliant, as ever, and as we knew it would be. Now we've actually got some questions. Some questions have come in the chat directly to everyone. Some have come in to me. And I'm going to start with one which is going to be quite fun, I think. If agile teams are supposed to be collaborative, cross-functional, self-organizing, and autonomous, then is there a role for leadership?
It's absolutely a fascinating question, and I think something that we struggle with. I think it depends on your definition of a leader, because I think if you've got the wrong leader, you don't need them. But I think if you've got the right type of leader, they are absolutely pivotal and instrumental in providing really three things: the vision. A clear vision, clarity. This is why you need constant conversations. You need to be constantly communicating with the leadership team. And remember, I see that as a role, not a position. I think the second thing is removing impediments. You know, there are things that the team will solve, but there are things the team can't solve, and that's up to leadership to figure that out. And then the third thing is providing that environment where people feel safe. So for me, absolutely, it's vital. I don't know what you guys think. Does that ring bell with ring true with everybody?
I would just say as well, Alistair, on that point quickly. You know, we were talking the other night. You know, it's kind of a reversal in a sense that leaders become service people. Really, the customers become the subordinates, if you like, to the team. So it kind of reverses the model. You know, they're providing a service to their customers.
Absolutely brilliant. No, that's absolutely right, and that's certainly. I feel that's certainly the topic of a conversation, a chat, a bit, or even a book. I think, Rochelle, is yes. Who, as a leader, who are you serving? Who is your customer? And it's the rest of the organisation. I think I love that.
There is already a book.
Is there?
Yeah, it's Robert Greenleaf from 1970s. It's called The Power of Servant Leadership, and it talks about 10 characteristics and a set of practices that people can follow. And much of what you just said in your talk is actually in that book. It flows. It's worth looking at.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a talk I'll send you. It's on servant leadership that talks about these characteristics, and really it's about I mean, to address that question just now, leaders are still going to be needed because they have another job, which is to draw out the best in the people and get them to work with each other and get them to work towards the vision, as exactly as you say. But I think there's a big piece about understanding and helping people grow, which individually they can't because of organizations, politics, all the rest of the stuff that is going to take many, many centuries to go. But I think the reality is a good servant leader absolutely enables the teams to be able to make the decisions because they're the experts there at the coalface, exactly as you said. He empathizes and understands what's going through these individuals, you know, not just being in their shoes, but walking a mile in their shoes, understanding exactly really what it's like to see through their eyes, hear through their ears, and feel with their hearts.
Oh, please do send me that, Alkesh. I really look forward to looking at that.
Yeah, sure.
Brilliant. All right, we have a next question. Femi, I've got it. I saved it. Do organizations really grasp the idea that agile transformation is not just implementing and handing off to the organization without nurturing and growing it? As ever, great question, Femi.
So say that first bit again.
Do organizations really grasp the idea that agile transformation is not just implementing and handing off to the organization without nurturing and growing it?
I think the answer is that my instinct is, Femi, is that most probably don't, to start with, is my instinct, because if you think about my background, as a chartered accountant, I have been trained to think in terms of processes and things that reduce risk. So to follow a pattern, somebody has laid down a pattern, let's follow that, and so on. So you're looking for tick boxes, you're looking for all those things. And I think to start with, you know, any organization that hasn't had this taught to them, an agile mindset taught to them, I think instinctively are probably going to say, well, you know, what do I do? Which is why I think we start with the frameworks. which help them understand the language and so on. And then after that, those 8-9 months section, when it starts to fall off, that's when you then come in and you say, oh, great, okay, good. Well, we know that Agile kind of works. Now it started falling off. That's now because we need more of this mindset stuff and this leadership stuff and so on. And we do it that way. And I talk about, sort of the frameworks being the Trojan horse to create the cultural change that we need. So the answer is, I think most don't to start with. And I think we who are Agile coaches and Agile consultants and so on, our job really is to help them understand that. By figuring out what it is exactly that they want. We need all that empathy and so on that Alkesh was talking about, so that we can hear what they are struggling with and really help them understand it. What's your experience, Femi?
Pretty much the same. Thank you very much for summarizing that. I think in our previous conversation, one of the meetings, you and I come from the same background. I used to be a financial accountant, did management accountancy, and we lived in the world of standard statements of standard accounting practices and financial reporting standards and generally accepted accounting practices. And that provides the framework within which accountancy operated. It wasn't perfect. And that's why you had a lot of financial scandals and a lot of organizations who abused the financial framework. And the end result was collapse. A lot of companies just basically collapsed, Lehman Brothers and so many before them. Now, fast forward to the world of Agile and a lot of organizations. I think there's a degree of complicity between some consultants who look at their meal ticket and they get their paycheck by going into the organization, delivering the Agile, here's your invoice, pay me, and off they go. They don't actually start with the premise that this is not something that we're just going to do one time, get paid, and move on. No. They need to encourage them. It goes in phases. And I don't want to repeat your presentation. You've summed it up perfectly, and your response is just spot on. Thank you very much.
Femi. That's very kind of you.
JF, have you got your hand up? Mute. You're on mute, Jeff.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yes, I wanted to leapfrog on what everybody's been saying here, from Femi, from Alistair. Part of this is what you just said, Femi, is that there is this thing sold. And the hard part about a transformation is that what is being sold, there is an end point. And unfortunately, a transformation has no end point. And that is the thing that most coaches or consultants fail to tell people, especially leadership, right? And so because of that, transformations never end.
That's absolutely true. There is, Agile itself doesn't have an end because it's continuous improvement, right? But the reality though is sometimes we're at fault in who we're talking to. And, if the IT department's talking to us and the dev teams are trying to get Agile and trying to put Agile practices in, it takes a lot of enterprise coaching and an understanding for the organization to see that it's actually a lot more than IT. And sometimes when they're looking for a fix to doing something, they're chasing a prescribed model. And they think the McKinsey type stuff will come in and say, follow these 10 steps and that will make you Agile. And some finance guy loves it. Everybody kind of loves it because they think this is something they bought, they can do, and it's going to solve the world for them. And we'd be all out of work if it was that bloody easy. The reality is that it's a lot more. It's about the people, the behaviors, the culture, and understanding what they have in the first place is the biggest headache.
No, you're absolutely right. All of us are. We're saying exactly the same thing. The two phrases that I sort of been playing with the last few days. One of them is, you say that success is a journey, not a destination, and I think it's the same for Agile.
There's a few good points I was going to just add. I mean, there's some things that have been coming up in the chat. Thanks guys, for the input here. Brilliant. But Marcos has obviously said, many consultants perpetuate this belief. They sell Agile as the silver bullet, use once and problems are gone. Mumway, unfortunately, most people think the frameworks is the end-all and be-all solution. They don't normally graduate out of the frameworks. Again, Marcus, transformation is a journey. If the goal is continuous growth and improvement, logic says it should not have an end. Bob, great one. Organizational psychotherapy, absolutely. Again, Marcos, unless they reach nirvana, but that's probably another meetup. Exactly. I mean, with so many of the pivots from these conversations, just like with so many we've all been at listening to one another over the last few weeks, we could have so many meetups just on individual topics. Brilliant. Rochelle, we need
Tim's got his hand up.
To be to an extent, which is absolutely brilliant.
You know, Charles, that reminds me that you know.
Sorry, Alkesh, Tim's just had his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Tim?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes. Sorry, Alkesh.
No, that's fine.
Tim.
It was just a quick question, if that's okay. My question first of all, thank you for your fantastic presentation. In terms of the problems that have been identified from a neuralistic programming or psychological, I think it's been mentioned several times anyway, and several of the sides indicated it's about understanding the personality traits of a particular, I'm going to say person, but there may be a group of people involved that's blocking a particular decision or a way forward. But getting back to the question, isn't it really under a psychological deep understanding of the characters involved that would allow a project to reach maturation or does that make any sense?
Absolutely, Tim, it does. And I've seen lots of heads nodding as you were saying what you were saying there, Tim. And I think that's absolutely right. Something that we were chatting about a couple of days ago, which is part of this, Tim, is the idea that we actually need to think a lot more. We actually need to stop and think, and we can't follow processes as we used to or as we would like to. And then there's that famous quote that 5% of the population think, 10% of the population think they think, and 80% of the population would rather die than think. And and I think that, well, there we go. I think so. Do I put myself where? But I feel that is so true. It is scary that you actually need to stop and go, what will happen if X, Y, Z? And you're in ambiguity and complexity again. So I agree with you, Tim. And having the empathy to be able to work with all the different personalities is critical. Thank you for that.
It's the clarity of being able to understand people and the clarity of being able to see the final vision that really is the key to delivering any project effectively.
100%.
Thank you.
I think it's in both directions too, right? Sorry.
Sorry, Alkesh, we jumped there. You were talking.
I keep forgetting about the hands. Sorry, apologies, guys.
That's all right, no worries. It does work well, especially.
We'll go back to Charles. I know there's more people talking.
We do. We also, Bob, and I don't know, Bob, whether you're happy for me to ask. Bob raised a sort of point earlier on in the chat window. Views on Deming's 95.5. And Bob, I didn't know whether there was any extra context to add to that, to the sort of question point you were raising. I don't know if Bob is available. If Bob isn't, that's absolutely fine. Alistair, are you aware of?
I'm not familiar with that. I've another thing for me to go and learn about. I'm excited.
Absolutely fine.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, well, that thank you very much. We have another one. What do you suggest to someone who, having listened to what you've talked about, recognize now in themselves that they're on the left side of the chart? Do you have any advice as to how to help them move to the right side of the chart?
Fantastic. That is great. The first thing is that if anybody spots that in themselves, then as far as I'm concerned, the job is 80% done, because the fact that they've recognized that in themselves means that it's a clear path. And the way you get there, or the way I got there, having been exactly that person who was very much stuck on the left, realizing that I didn't want to be there anymore. The realization was the first thing, and then looking for I use my E.E.M.C model there, is looking for the explanations as to what would the difference is, looking for the evidence. So I immersed myself in books. This was in the days before YouTube, and it would have been YouTube otherwise, but in and the great classics around leadership, personal development, and so forth, and all these things that we've been talking about. Then I surrounded myself with, I found some mentors who helped me with that as well. Interesting thing about mentors is that they come and go. You don't always get a mentor for life. They will, they'll take you to a certain level, and then you may need to find somebody else. So yeah, explain, evidence, model, test, experiment. The last time that I shouted at somebody to try and get them to do something and that didn't work, the time after that I tried a different approach and see what happened, and it worked, and that was a revelation. So I did more of that, and so on, and found some coaches. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And as we go forward, Bob's actually wonderfully shared a quote by Trip Babbitt saying, "Dr. Deming taught me that 95% of the performance of an organization is attributable to the system, processes, technology, work, design, regulations, etc., and only 5% is attributable to the individual."
I'll have to look into that. I'm going to something for me to study. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries at all. We have one from Brianna. Brianna, do you want to share it?
Sure. So my question is, as Agile practitioners, could we do a better job than our current management, or would we become part of the problem too?
Could we do what?
Could we do better than the current management, or would we become part of the problem too? Based on what we know about Agile and all the problems we see with management and leadership, could we actually be better leaders, or are we just going to succumb to the same problems that
I think one could succumb to the same problems. I presume in that example you're saying you are on an Agile team or whatever, and you're a doer, and now you've moved into management or something. What happens next? I think it probably depends on how much you have really adopted the mindset. And I think if you have adopted the mindset, you will be changing your peers and your seniors rather than the other way around. I put the quote on, Victor Hugo said, "No one can stop an idea whose time has come." And I put that on my website because I thought it was just such a great, powerful quote that sits with us now. And Agile is an idea whose time has come. I pity the fool who stands in its way, to quote another 1980s TV show.
Could I add on something you said earlier on, which was, don't judge somebody till you walked a mile in their shoes, I think, by which time you'll be a mile away from them and you'll have their shoes. It's often interesting, isn't it, that we all think we can do a better job, and then suddenly we're put in there and it's, oh my God, what we had, this is a bit, it always looks easy. It's easy to criticize. But I started this master's degree in leadership coaching and behavioral change, and the first thing I started to do is to get more self-awareness. I didn't learn about anybody else. I started to learn about me and my reactions to situations, and my ability, to disconnect what I'm observing from what I'm judging, and separating those things out. And this is probably a good point for another talk, but it delves into sort of the leadership bit, really. It's like we've been using words like, psychiatrists and psychotherapy and stuff, but really, if you went into an organization and even went to the C-suite, which isn't necessarily the best place to start, but in some ways to understand the personality of the organization. And we were talking about this earlier in the week. It'd be interesting if you put a kind of graph up of the various pivot points around that, but you probably find, you know, is this an organization ready to change? Is it an organization ready to be, you know, in leadership, and what support that each of those people need? So it often isn't just about agile coaching, it becomes about, as many people have pointed out, leadership coaching as well. And sometimes
absolutely
there are narcissistic people in there, aren't there, Alistair? You can't.
Absolutely, I think, and again, you know, we talk about agile, and I think a lot of people sort of, you know, have a shrinked view of what we mean, and the reason for what that first quadrant thing where I talk about the bureaucratic mindset and the agile mindset, and I'm trying to say it's not just about the frameworks, it's not just about the terminology and so forth. It's actually about human, as we have all, I think, been saying and agreeing, it's about human behavior, human psychology, and that's why I'm so excited about it, because that stuff to me is everything. That's what means that people will wake up on a Monday morning and look forward to going to work, because they can't wait to get back to their friends who they've been working with and delivering that great product that they've been working on. And that sense of, you know, that is exactly the opposite to my experiences when I first started my career, which was, you know, come sort of 3-4 p.m. on a Sunday, I just felt this tightening around my neck as I was knowing that I was going to have to go through another 5 days of what I consider to be hell, because of we didn't have all of these things that we're talking about, and you know, to be in a situation where one is responsible for people's you know, for people's happiness at work, and the fact that they look forward to coming in and they can't, you know, they jump on the meetings early and they can't wait to do all things. That's just, to me, that's just huge.
You sure it wasn't because you're working in finance?
It probably was. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, look, so we've got another question from Tim. And now I would actually just point people to the chat window. There's some great stuff going on. Marcus has added some a great quote in again from Deming, one that I actually know very well. Bob is also adding in some extra things and thought leadership in there to go and check out afterwards.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. I'm looking forward to looking at all that at the end of this. Thank you.
Get in there, have a look at the chat, what's going on, because there's some great stuff coming up. But Tim, your hand was up first, so back to you.
Thank you very much. I wondered, with the psychological emphasis on understanding people, whether or not it would be appropriate to recommend, or at the end of this session, to recommend the most pivotal books. For myself, I'd recommend Steve Peters, Professor Steve Peters, on the chimp paradox, in understanding why people behave a certain way in terms of their reactions. And I can recommend several other, and one in particular, which I'd be happy to share. I can't remember the title, but it's almost like having your own personal NLP coach. But would anybody else like to recommend a particular book that's been absolutely pivotal in, that seems to be the word of the night, in understanding the needs of people, or why people are reacting the way they are in a meeting, in order to progress everybody to reaching the outcome that is desired?
And can I add one to that? Sorry but if people are going to suggest a book, can we add, if there is an available at Amazon, there's no affiliate links going on here, but if there is an Amazon link, then can we get them into the chat window so that we can all save the chat, have the links to gain access to the books that we are wanting to reference?
No, absolutely. Thank you for that one, Tim. And yes, Giles, if you could write them in, because I love reading. You can tell. One of the books that really did something for my brain was a book by a guy called David Rock called Your Brain at Work. And this is written in the form of a story where there are a couple who are going through their lives, and what he does is he set it out in the form of a play. And what happens is that they act out scene one, and then there's the discussion as to what should have happened, and then they act out scene one again with the new understanding and the new knowledge, which comes from neuroscience and or neuroleadership. That book was absolutely been fantastic for me. Thank you. You've put it in the chat there.
I have, yeah. I went.
That's brilliant. Yes, if I had to recommend one, you've already recommended another one, Tim, that I would recommend as well. The Chimp Paradox. Absolutely love that book. Yes, Your Brain at Work would be my offering on that. I do have others, and I will. We can certainly, when we produce this, post the books that I've used as that I would recommend as part of this as well. A really great one is The Naked Pilot as well. By the way, it's an odd thing to read because it feels like it's only relevant to pilots, but I think it's relevant to everybody. Just that way that they now have of dealing with each other and treating each other, and how they've moved from a very, very command and control position to now. I think it's a fascinating story. But thank you, Tim. That's a great idea. We should share books with each other.
We've had some others coming in. Alkesh is in there talking crucial conversations, talking stakes second. We've got JF's got one in here, managing with Aloha. And we've also got some book suggestion from Bob as well, Nonviolent Communication. So by Marshall Rosenberg. So brilliant. This is exactly what we need from this evening. I remember everybody, please, before we leave, to save your chat, and then you'll get all the links to this evening. And actually, in fact, if anyone, great book, by the way, Dan Pink's Drive. If anyone isn't able to get the link, then mail one of us after this, leave a message in the meetup group, and we'll get you the list of books that way over to you. Okay, good stuff. Has anyone? So the next question in the list is Mr. Alkesh. Question.
No, it was a while ago. What were we talking about? Sorry. I know. I think it was just we were talking about thinking about the people and psychological makeup, or the cultural understanding and empathizing, etc. We need to turn the other way and think about that for our leaders as well. Why do they do what they do? What pressures are they dealing with? What's the challenges? What is it that is making them, maybe the managers are in a fear and blame kind of setup, even though the teams underneath them are more open to agile. They themselves might be in a situation that they can't afford to play quite the same innovative game. Mm-hmm. So yeah, everything we practice, we need to do both ways.
100%. That is a superb insight, Alkesh. Definitely, 100% agree.
Brilliant. Do we have any more questions this evening?
Or comments?
Or comments before we sort of slowly begin to wrap up? Isabel's added one as well. Changing context and making everyone a leader. That's certainly one to go and check out. But thanks to Bob for the great additions. Thanks, Bob, for coming. Does anyone else have any sort of other, as I said, questions or insights? Wrap up time for Femi as well. So great to see you, Femi. Brilliant. Thanks very much as ever.
Just wanted to say about
see you next time. Thank you very much, everyone.
Sorry, I'm a bit late, but I would like to ask something or say something. My name is Zara. And I know Alistair. Hi, Alistair.
Hi.
I have the impression that in this group you are preaching to the choir. I think that's the expression in English. So I was wondering if you can find a way to interact with people who have a different view. That's one thing. And the other thing is, this reminds me of my experience when it comes to being part of employee networks. What we try to do for Black employees, what we try to do for the LGBT community, what we try to do for women, disabled, and so on. We use the figure of allies, and sometimes allies are not the right word, but the figure of someone who facilitates this maybe education or transformation in mindset in other people. So I was wondering if you would consider this sort of approach to assuming that that's the goal that you have. I think you're trying to drive like a wave, a transformation across the culture. So yeah, these are my 2 points. I'm sorry I was late. I was trying to click buttons and sorry, I'm on my phone.
No, Ara, I think you make a really interesting point. I think part of there is an aspect of we're preaching to the choir, and I think sometimes in some meetups that we attend, it can sometimes feel like that. But I think what's important when we are in that space or in this space is that we are actually helping each other and giving each other the courage to do exactly what you're talking about, which is to then go out and talk to other people. So we have many conversations, not in the meetups, where we talk with each other and we solve problems for each other and we act as each other's coaches. Or uncles and aunts, as we call ourselves, we act as that for each other, which I think is fantastic. And in terms of diversity, is that which I think is what you're talking about in terms of diversity and all of that? Absolutely, we you will see most of the groups wanting to involve more and more people from very, very different backgrounds, and who and we'll ask people to step forward and do that. If I've understood your point there. We are absolutely about that.
I was thinking even diversity in not like in thought, like people who don't agree with this mindset and so on, not literally physical diversity.
Yeah, and there are meetups when that happens a lot, right? I think we've all been there, and we need that. We welcome that. I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to hear what people had to say was, looking for either things that will support what I think, or things that will challenge it and therefore make me think differently. And everyone is welcome. It's a self-selecting group, which is great. But it's a really interesting point, Ara. Thank you.
One of the goals I think that we would like to see, and I am going to come back to Rochelle in a second because I know she was just about to ask a question as well. But one of the keys for us with this group, with this community that way back when I sort of started talking to Alistair many months ago, it is the sense that we want to invite those people that are experiencing friction with Agile, that are experiencing a lack of understanding or problems in the workplace with it as well. Inviting them in here to gain some of the thought leadership from people like Alistair and others that are talking in this group, and actually get them to actually ask the difficult questions if they've got them, so that we can uncover some of the problems and the challenges that they're facing in the workplace and actually help them and aid them overcome them. And it doesn't matter what background they're coming from, it doesn't matter what the challenge is. Come and have a conversation with us as a community. We are here to help. And I get it, to Ara's question, it's difficult because yes, at times it does feel like we sit and talk to our community and the people who do get it, preaching to the choir. But we should be trying to make more people come to groups and meetings just like this to help them realize that actually, in fact, there's a huge network of people with amazing backgrounds and amazing thought leadership who will help just by reaching out and asking for it. And Rochelle, I know I'm just going to come. Jay, I forgot you. I'll come back and say, but I know Rochelle was just about to say something a short while ago.
Yeah, and actually it's related to that. I mean, it is the almost the social media issue in a sense that people are in their own bubbles. And I was actually going to say, Giles's talks that he's been doing was a great one last night. Actually, really enjoyed that too. Really great. But that is probably the secret sauce, isn't it? I think it's a really good point being made. Is that the doubters and the people that think Agile is going to fail or they're concerned. The trick is to get them embroiled. But what these sessions for me are doing about sharing ideas of what's worked in different situations and being a community. And for me, this is absolutely incredibly valuable, and I'm really so glad of the relationships that I built over the lockdown. About one of the few good things out of COVID. So we just need to kind of, but you could imagine if you just plonked a doubter into this group here, they would probably feel somewhat intimidated.
Oh, we'd have so much fun.
Can I come back to JF a sec? Because I know we've got a sort of about three or 4 minutes left, and I know JF just had a quick point to make.
I'll just have a quick one. to Araceli's point, yes, there's a little bit of bubble sound chamber here. However, we have a perfect example right now, real life. Back in 2005, I was an Agile coach at Yahoo. We were trying to roll Agile out to the entire enterprise. It was the first one of its kind in the world. And my colleague, who I call a dear friend today, Munwei, who's here on this call, was one of the skeptics that I had to work with. And over the years, we've managed to actually, have really wonderful discussions about some of these things. And so basically my answer is go outside of this meetup and go to your own company and actually engage people and just ask, I would love to know more about where you're coming from. May I see your point of view? Something like that, right? So Munwei finally appeared, so you can take it away, Munwei.
Absolutely.
Munwei, have you got anything to sort of help wrap up this evening's festivities?
Oh my goodness, no pressure, I see. Wow. Thank you, JF, for telling everybody that story. That was not expected at all. My goodness. We need to have a talk afterwards.
You've all been in the dark side at some point, darling.
I will send my calls to voicemail.
Oh, I have other ways to find you, not a problem.
Well, I admitted I used to be command and control Munwei. So if we're going to join Giles's confessional, I think we need to be willing for that.
But here's the interesting thing: I was never command and control.
No, you weren't.
I just didn't know what this agile thing was, and of course there's these group of central, consultant agile people who try to roll everything out for the rest of the organization, which JF was part of it. And I had huge responsibility because the project was very high visibility. In fact, the CTO of Yahoo at that time has about 15,000 employees. And the CTO actually came to our project every single week to check on our project. So, to put a project like that and go agile. And I said, well, have you done anything like that before? How about UX and UI, user experience design, which Yahoo was very huge on. And how do you deal with that? Oh, by the way, we're also rolling out to 20 countries at the same time. Have you done that as well? And of course, every single answer come back at that time was no, 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 no. And so I said, well, if that's the case, I'm sorry, because I do have a project to deliver and I have the CTO on my back every single week. And so I'm sorry, no. So I was a skeptic because I like to see any tried and true solution. But I'm curious, so I was curious, so I kept an eye out and see what they were up to, and they had these pilot projects, and they publish all these great results. And I actually went to JF's boss, who is Gabrielle Benefield, and I told her, I said, I'm sorry, I do not believe it, because I do not believe anything would look that good. Where are your failure stories? I want to see those. And she shared those with me. And so that's how I looked at it, go, all right, that makes sense. Okay. All right. Brilliant. So yeah, Brilliant. So slowly and surely.
Brilliant.
I'm now indoctrinated. So.
And now you're leading the way with Agile in HR, you and JF, which is just awesome to watch as well. So well done, you.
Fantastic. Look, guys, thank you very much. Alistair, once again, thank you very much for coming and talking to us today. Great. Thank you, everybody, as ever, for coming this evening and being part of a fantastic conversation again. And I look forward to seeing everybody at the next event soon in a couple of weeks. So look out on the meetup group and look forward to seeing everyone again. Alistair, thanks once again.
Thanks,
guys. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody, for making this a really, really interesting and growing experience. Thank you very much. You're awesome, all of you.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.